In this video, we're going to talk about the non-vascular, seedless plants, collectively known as bryophytes. Some general characteristics of bryophytes are that they are the closest living relative of early terrestrial plants. There are over 25,000 known species, and they are mostly found in damp habitats. However, some can be found, and they are mostly found in damp habitats, although some can be found in deserts or the tundra. Bryophytes are relatively small in size, which makes them tolerant to desiccation or drying out. If they become dried out, once water is available again, they can rehydrate and continue living. Bryophytes are non-vascular, which we can also refer to that as non-tracheophytes. They lack xylem, and remember, xylem are just these vessels that are able to transport water and minerals from the roots of vascular plants to the other parts of the plant. So bryophytes are non-vascular, so they do not have these xylem. Bryophytes do have some special conducting cells that help them to circulate water and nutrients around the plant, but they differ in structure and function from true xylem. Bryophytes have to live near water. They don't have roots, so they're not able to essentially reach out and absorb water from surrounding areas. They also don't have those vascular cells, so they can't easily transport a lot of water and nutrients around the cell. And without the vascular cells, they don't have that molecule known as lignin. And lignin helps to give the plant some support or structure. Bryophytes also rely on water because the male gamete has to swim to the female gamete in order for sexual reproduction to occur. If we look at the morphology or the structure of the vegetative organs of bryophytes, and by vegetative organs we mean essentially everything except for the reproductive organs. So if we look at these vegetative organs, bryophytes do not have true leaves, stem, or roots due to a lack of vascular tissue, but they do have some similar structures. So they do have some leaf-like structures where photosynthesis occurs. They have a stem-like structure. They have a thallus, which is also known as the plant body. And then they have rhizoids, and the rhizoid is kind of like a precursor to roots. It does help to anchor the plant to the substrate or whatever the environment, the soil is, but the rhizoids are not considered true roots because they do not have that vascular tissue running through them. So the rhizoid is acting as an anchor, but it's not absorbing or taking in water or nutrients. There are three phyla that are in this kind of Bryophyta classification. And remember that we're talking about the non-vascular seedless plants. So there's phylum Marcantiophyta, which are also known as the liverworts, phylum Anthoceratophyta, which are the hornworts, and then there is also a phylum just known as phylum Bryophyta, which are known as the mosses, and these are actually also referred to as the true bryophytes. So it's nice and confusing that there's a phylum Bryophyta, but then altogether these three phyla are collectively known as the bryophytes. So let's start by taking a look at phylum Marcantiophyta, which are also known as the liverworts. There are over 7,000 known species of liverworts. They can be classified as either lobate liverworts or leafy liverworts. The lobate liverworts have a flat thallus, and you can see an example of that on these specimens right here in this picture. So this kind of flat area here would be the lobate thallus. And liverworts actually got their name from these lobate liverworts because livers have lobes, and so it looks like the lobes of a liver. The leafy liverworts have leaf-like structures attached to a stalk, and you can see examples of those here. Liverworts conduct gas exchange through openings in the thallus, or the plant body. And these openings are different from stomata. And when we refer to gas exchange, remember that carbon dioxide has to go into the plant and oxygen has to be able to come out of the plant. Liverworts also do not have a waxy cuticle covering their structures, so they have to live in moist, humid areas to prevent drying out or becoming dehydrated. Liverworts are able to reproduce either sexually or asexually. Sexually would be following that alternation of generations like we've discussed before. But if we take a closer look at asexual reproduction in liverworts, they have these special leaf fragments called gemmy that are produced in a cup on the surface of the thallus. So if we look at this picture here, this kind of leaf-like structure here is the thallus. And then the gemmy are these cup-like structures here. And these structures contain reproductive cells, such as spores. And when it rains, the rain actually kind of pushes the spores out of the gemmy, and then they are able to germinate and develop into gametophytes of liverworts nearby. The next bryophyte phylum we're going to talk about is phylum Anthocerotophyta, which are also known as the hornworts. Hornworts live in moist areas. They're known for having a narrow pipe-like sporophyte, which you can see on this picture here. They also have stomata. Remember that stomata are openings in the tissues for gas exchange. And they have those guard cells that are able to either swell up or kind of relax in order to open and close the opening, which is the stomata. The thallus contains photosynthetic cells that each have a single chloroplast. Hornworts also have meristome cells that divide throughout their life so they can continue to grow throughout their entire life, and this is unique to hornworts. Hornworts are also known for having a symbiotic relationship with cyanobacteria, and this helps to fix nitrogen. Remember that nitrogen fixation is taking nitrogen gas from the atmosphere and converting it into a form that plants can use, such as ammonia and nitrites and nitrates. So now we're going to talk about the non-vascular seedless plants that are in the phylum Bryophyta. So remember that all non-vascular seedless plants are collectively known as bryophytes, but those in the phylum Bryophyta are more specifically referred to as mosses. Mosses are the most numerous of the non-vascular plants. There are over 10,000 known species. They also have a wider variety in the habitat that they can live in. So they're very common in the understory of tropical forests, but they can also be found in the tundra. And the tundra is known to be a cold, dry biome. That is fairly inhospitable to plant life. But these mosses have these shallow rhizoids. Remember that rhizoids are kind of like roots, but not roots, but they are these anchoring filaments. And mosses have really shallow rhizoids, so they are able to attach to a substrate without penetrating the frozen ground. And in the tundra has permafrost, so the ground is essentially permanently frozen, except for maybe the very top layer. So with the shallow rhizoids, mosses are able to still attach themselves to the substrate without having to go too deep into the frozen part of the permafrost. Mosses serve a variety of very important ecological roles. They help to slow erosion, and this is because their rhizoids, with their anchoring filaments, kind of help to hold soil in place. They also store moisture and soil nutrients in their tissues. They provide shelter for small animals, especially things like invertebrates. They serve as a source of food for herbivores. This is especially important in the tundra, where there isn't a lot of plant matter around. So herbivores like caribou and elk can eat mosses as a source of food and energy. Mosses are also sensitive to air pollution, so scientists can look at the abundance and diversity of mosses in a general or in a given area in order to monitor the air quality in that area. So if we take a closer look at the morphology of mosses, remember morphology just means the structure. So in mosses, the multicellular haploid gametophyte generation is the more dominant one. And what we mean by dominant is that the plant spends more of its time in this part of its life cycle, and it's just more conspicuous or more noticeable. And this is kind of unique amongst plants. So all of the other plants that we talk about will be focusing on the sporophyte generation being the more dominant of the generations in the alternation of generations. So we can see in this picture here that mosses have these green, flat, leaf-like structures attached to a stalk. Mosses do not have true leaves. They do not have stomata, which are those openings that allow for gas exchange, and they do not have vascular tissue, so they do not have xylem or phloem. They absorb water across all of their tissues, and this is one reason why mosses are typically located close to the ground and in wet areas. Mosses do have a primitive conduction system that helps to carry water and nutrients up the stalk, but remember that they don't have true leaves and they don't have true vascular tissue either. They are anchored to the substrate by multicellular rhizoids. And remember that rhizoids are anchoring structures that are similar to roots, but they do not have the vascular tissue, so they are not true roots. And these rhizoids are also what help to prevent or reduce soil erosion.